So, stuck in recession, plagued by soaring unemployment and suicides, the Greek plight is dragging on, sending shivers across the EU. Greece is struggling to meet the conditions of its international lenders who are pouring billions into the ailing economy. But when will that rescue package actually work? Or has the whole bailout been a failure? RT's Egor Piskunov's been widely covering Greece's dire situation. Here's his report on some of those suffering at the sharp end.
George got his first job in his early 20s, beginning as a musician, then a radio producer, and finally as an IT specialist at the Greek Foreign Office. About 4 years ago, he was sacked, and since he didn't own any real estate, the Troika's austerity measures ended up casting him onto the streets.
Everything's changed for the worst. They cut pensions, they cut salaries, they cut jobs. They throw out people that were working for tens of years.
Even so, George says he's lucky since around a year ago he managed to become a volunteer at this shelter for the homeless. At least this way there's a roof over his head where he could help others like him cope with their bleak new reality. With Greek unemployment currently at 27%, which is the highest in Europe, each year more and more people with higher education and impressive work experience find themselves on the street.
No one can feel sure about his job, about his salary, about his pension, about his social benefits. Wherever you walk in the streets of Athens, you see people who before 5 years have a regular job. They have families, but now they have no job, there is no welfare state.
In July, despite nationwide protests, the government approved yet another set of austerity measures, including laying off tens of thousands of public workers, including teachers, doctors, and police officers. It meant Greece could secure the release of the first installment of over 8 billion euros in the latest rescue loan from the Troika.
We're going to talk about this for a few minutes now. In fact, Egor Piskunov, our correspondent there who made that report on Greece, is joining me now. Hi there. Good to see you tonight. Good to see you in person, at least. We've got a lot of other guests as well to come into the conversation. Hugh Bronson from the Alternative for Germany party. He's in Berlin tonight. Karel Lannoo is the head for the Centre of European Policy Studies in Brussels. And we've got Panagiotis Sotiris, social and political philosophy lecturer, joining us in Athens. Gentlemen, evening to you all. Nice to see you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. Egor, I'd like to come to you first of all because we just saw your report. I mean, you've talked to guys there in Greece firsthand. You spend a lot of time there. What is the feeling as this recession drags on? People are still in a heck of a lot of strife there. Is there any feeling that there's light at the end of the tunnel anytime soon?
Well, first of all, this particular report is just about one man. George is his name, and he told me himself that he clearly understands that he is only one of thousands of people who found themselves in this very difficult situation, having worked for tens of years. His personal work experience is around 40 years, and he couldn't pay for his flat. He didn't own a flat himself, so he ended up on the street. And he said that this shelter is his only chance of somewhat having a normal life. And he says that I'm just only one of thousands. And this is actually only one side of this whole story, because the crisis isn't only affecting the homeless or those who've been laid off. It's also affecting pretty much all spheres of society, from drug addicts who started using this extremely bad for your health, very cheap drug, which is even worse than heroin, as they say. Parents, many of them are forced to put their children in these special schools for 5 days out of the week because they can't afford to buy food to them. And,
I mean, is this the far end of the scale, or is this affecting, I'm not talking about the drugs, but maybe you're talking about now, you know, problems with childcare, the whole thing, education.
Childcare,
is this the far end of the scale, or is it quite a lot of people in this position?
Quite a lot of people are being affected. These layoffs currently are aimed mainly at the public sector, and the public sector traditionally is the foundation of the Greek economy. That's why so many people are taking to the streets to protest all these measures.
Let's go to Athens. Panagiotis, we've spoken to you many times before. Every time we've talked about the huge amounts, the billions being poured into Greece from international lenders. We heard Egor there. He's seen it firsthand that you know, the guys he's talking to at least are pretty depressed. They don't see light at the end of the tunnel. You're in Athens. What's your view?
Well, it is obvious by now that the whole scenario adopted for Greece has been a catastrophic one. Despite those huge bailout loans, Greek debt is still very high. We have reached a peak of 321 billion euros of debt. So which means that we are much worse than when the debt crisis
But surely
started.
people were trying their best to help at the time, weren't they?
But at the same time, the result of all these bailout agreements has been tremendous upon Greek society. We've been in an enormous recession. The Greek economy will, at the end of the year, have contracted by almost 30%, which is something unheard of before in advanced countries. We've seen all the consequences, such as huge unemployment, and at the same time, the terms imposed by the bailout agreements will simply make things worse.
So
for
in a
example,
nutshell,
the
yes
demand,
or no, the bailout, good or bad, as far as you're concerned?
the bailouts were bad, the bailouts were catastrophic.
Karel Lannoo, Centre for European Studies in Brussels there. Was it pouring good money after bad, do you think? You're a proponent of the bailout, aren't you?
I mean, I think there was no alternative than the bailout. Let's say the alternative would have been much worse the situation. And I don't think from Greece you have to look very far. You simply look to Bulgaria, for example, to see, I mean, how much worse it could have been. Still today, living standards in Greece are higher than they are in Bulgaria. If Greece were to have left the Eurozone, and that's why I'm in favor of a further bailout, I mean, it would have been confronted with rampant inflation, let's say, because imports would become very expensive. There's hardly any exports in Greece. Of course, for tourism it would be good, but Greece doesn't have a very strong productive economy, unlike, for example, Portugal or unlike Spain. So that's why I think, let's say, the only way forward for Greece is to have a further bailout, of course, and to have stayed in the Eurozone, because the alternative, again, let's say, would have been worse. Why do I say, let's say, that I'm in favor of a further bailout? It's simply because we have done the efforts now. Let's say we just better go on. In the other case, we could have said from the beginning to Greece, you better leave the Eurozone. But again, as I think, let's say, this was not an alternative, I think we need to go on. An additional reason, let's say, not to leave Greece for the moment is, I think, let's say, that the impact on financial markets in general would be very bad, because then again, let's say, we would see the situation which we've seen at the end of 2011, early 2012, let's say, that markets would start to hesitate again about Europe's resolve to keep the Eurozone together, which would be damaging the entire Eurozone, not only Greece.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of hindsight is always a great thing. Wish we all had it all the time, but we don't. But looking back, there was a warning, wasn't there, from Gerhard Schroeder, allowing originally Greece into the Eurozone, saying the crisis emerged over many years through founding errors in the Euro. For example, quote, Greece should not have been admitted into the Euro area. Hugh Bronson from the Alternative for Germany party. Your ex-chancellor correct then, yeah?
Well, in this point he was correct, yes. We all know that, for instance, you just showed it on your monitor that Greek authorities paid Goldman Sachs and other banks huge amounts of money, and the regions of hundreds of millions of dollars, for a nice little financial transaction called the cross-currency swap. Now, it's a nice little device by which you change your money at fictitious rates into yen and dollar, thus hiding the true amount of your debts and your lending. I will firmly believe, and that's the view of my party, that the euro was a political project. It never had any financial standing. Every financial expert who looked at this said, this is at the wrong time, it is far too soon, it cannot survive. You put together 17 countries of completely different outlook, who have different economic strengths. Look at Finland, look at Holland, the Netherlands, Germany, Austria, and on the other hand you have countries like Spain and Greece. Yes,
yeah, it's gone back to the hindsight. Let me just be clear as well, it's Merkel that was criticising Schroeder. I got it the wrong way around. Obviously, it was Merkel criticising Schroeder for letting him in initially. But now we're hearing that Greece might need another bailout, that times are still tough. Good idea or bad?
I think it's a disastrous idea. Once you realize you've made a mistake, you should stop doing it. It is very simple. The bailout is not helping the Greek people. We've just seen the images of people, homeless people living in shelters, losing their jobs, cannot pay the rent. Their pension funds are disappearing. Now, the bailout money is not aimed to help the Greek people. It is aimed at a huge rescue package for banks. 85–89% of the entire bailout money, which is now 240 billion euros, has been passed on to into the banking system. Only a small margin actually has been given to Greece to operate with. And this is unfair by any standard.
Guys, so sorry we're going to leave it there. We could talk about this for at least the next hour and a half, 2 hours. I know, unfortunately, once again, time's beaten us. But Egor Piskunov, Hugh Bronson, Karel Lannoo.
But we should have corrected some visions, eh? We should have corrected some views of the person from the alternative Europe
wish we
party.
could.
Just because who has benefited most? Not the banks, but I think Germany has benefited most from the Eurozone. That's why CDU is campaigning on staying within the Eurozone, and that's why Merkel has 30% of the approval rate. Because Germany is thriving. Germany exports all over Europe, and they have a big interest in having a stable currency zone.
Guys, we'll let you have your final say. Sorry about that. Thank you. We've got to go to a break. I'm so sorry. We're going to try and get you back for another programme, I think, at this rate.
Thank you.
All right, thanks ever so much. Thank you for being on RT. Thank you for
very much
watching
for having me.
as well.